So we have Team 6, Sweden-Australia, Kristin Larsson, Daniel Hansson, Adriel Young, tillsammans med, together with Johan Hasselmark, the support crew, entering Gräskö in the lead in this race right now. We are leaving the race for just a few moments because we are going to the studio Briggen. We are sailing along the race down south on this beautiful ship, Tre Kronor. It's pretty cold though, but here we are, and together with me right now, Marcus Moberg, who is professor in exercise physiology. No. Yeah. You help me with that one, because it's so long, and then we have the school also. So
yeah.
You start with the title.
At the Swedish School of Sports and Health Sciences.
Exactly, GIH.
GIH
yeah.
in Stockholm.
Exactly, yeah. And you are monitoring this race very closely this year also. You've done it for multiple years now. What are you looking at exactly?
Yeah, so this is my third year here. It's been a developing journey all the time. So the main take here is basically we want to monitor the athletes as they go. The main goal is to study the limits of human capacity, and we know that it's not one thing that limits the capacity. So our take is that we have to measure as much as possible, and we don't want to measure before and after. We want to be there when it happens, and that's why we are so fortunate to work with this organization, that we work together to really be able to monitor the athletes as they go.
Yeah.
So that's
it's the real-time data you're looking
real-time data, or 1 minute delay or so, but as real-time as it gets.
Yeah. And what exactly are you measuring?
So this year we scaled down a little bit. Last year we went all in to really do as much as possible. So that we measured the heart rate, we measured blood glucose, we measured blood ketones that you get while you're fasting, so you're fat burning, and then also your core temperature. So and that was really, really interesting, but we had 4 sensors on them, which was sort of well tolerated by the athletes, but it's of course a challenge. I mean, these sensors are made to be worn for a few hours with exercise, or maybe a week in normal life. So it's a challenge to keep them on. So to this year we figured that we'll scale it down. So we're focusing on heart rate and blood glucose, and also trying to optimizing the GPS with the intensities and so on.
And we can also see on the pictures here that you are monitoring the hearts of the athletes, right?
Yeah, exactly. So one aspect is what happens during, but there's also sort of a medical aspect to see what are the consequences of doing such a race. Last year we had the focus on what happens in the blood. So we took blood from everyone, but this year we focus on the heart. So I had a colleague, Helena Wallin from Karolinska, who's done cardiac screenings on basically all of them. So we know what the basic status of the heart is, and then we'll try to do as many as possible at Landshut to see the immediate sort of consequences of doing such a race.
Yeah, and what are you expecting to see? I mean, what can you find?
I mean, we don't really know. The literature is both on and off, so some go through this without any notable changes, but some get compromised heart function, but that seems to be quite acutely, so they might recover within a day. So basically the heart functions in a worse manner. It doesn't pump out the way it's supposed to, which of course reduces your capacity towards the end, but it seems to bounce back quite rapidly. So that's also something we want to make clear, that, I mean, this seems to be safe. There are no major consequences of doing this.
And as I said in the beginning, you've done this for multiple years now. What are the conclusions so far? Yeah,
so first of all, we wanted to focus on the body temperature, because we know that they are cold, and especially today. So at least I thought, based on what I've seen before, that they're shivering so much that they might be hypothermic, sort of too cold to be good. So we wanted to measure the temperatures of the bodies. And I was quite surprised, actually, that basically all athletes were around 37 or above. So that tells us that they're always active. They have very good equipment with the wetsuits and everything. So that they seem to maintain it quite good. that does not mean that they're not cold.
No.
So there's this clear distinction of feeling really, really cold, as you might do when you have a fever. Then you might go up to 39 degrees, but you still shiver and feel really cold. But I think it's good for them to know that it doesn't seem to be critical. So you can know in the back of your head that it hurts, it's very unpleasant, but it's not dangerous.
No. And since you said you're also measuring the heart rate,
Yeah.
And this is an extreme endurance race, what can you say about the correlation between the heart rate, and the energy sources, and maybe also the oxygen uptake?
Yeah, so we got quite good data from last year. They started off at around 75-80% of their max for about 4 to 5 hours, so that's about now in the race. And I actually noticed from the data we get now that some were at like 190, so that at their max for some cases. And then after 4 or 5 hours it starts to decline. And then after about 12 hours it seems to be around 50-60% of their max throughout the race. That means that now they're burning carbs as much as possible, but after half a day or so they'll be starting to rely more on fat.
Yeah. But what they are digesting and eating, that's primarily carbohydrates.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. So I mean, they have enough fat to go along, but the carbohydrates they need, of course, for the brains to function fully, and also it's more energy requiring to use fat as a source. So they want that combined.
Yeah.
So even though it's much fat, you cannot rely on it 100%.
Yeah. And it's so many variables that you can look at.
Yeah.
When you see who's performing good and not here. If you could measure anything you would like to, what would you like to measure?
That's a really good question. I mean, we measure the basic things that we think are critical, but what we have learned also, these athletes are very well prepared. The top end, they're all in good shape. So what seems to be determining is sort of their strategies, how they cope with it in the teamwork setting, physiological aspects. So one thing I would like to go into more is what happens in the brain. How do they cope with the sleep deprivation? How's the cognitive function, especially during the critical hours towards the end? So more aspects in the brain would be interesting to study, but we'll have to think about it for next year.
And what kind of graphics can you show us later on in this competition? What will we look at?
Yeah, so right now we're collecting live data on the heart rate and blood glucose, and we could also link that a little bit to where they are with the speeds and so on. So we could follow the athletes along and especially compare the athletes at the same time points, so or at least compare the different teams.
Yeah. I would like to invite also Chris Gimmel to this conversation. He's the head of communications and marketing at World Triathlon. Welcome.
Welcome.
And I know if you wanted to, you could speak a little bit Swedish, right? Because you live in Sweden.
A little bit. Yeah,
keep it
a
in
little
English.
bit.
And I know, Chris, you're pretty interesting in this work also, and all the data and analysis that are made.
Yeah. I think it's like it's something that this day and age is quite essential in what is a media product, and obviously it's important not only from an entertainment perspective in terms of how you use a second screen, whether it's a digital stream or whether it's what you're having to put out on a linear feed on general television, but also there's an operational element to it, which Mark's pointed out, which is like, of course, there's a safety side of it too as well. So like, it's just seeing how we can invest in things and look at how we can integrate things, which actually gives like dual purposes, not only just an entertainment or an operational side.
Because is that something you're really looking at, to putting more data into the broadcast, for example?
I think that's what everybody's dream is. I think data's king at the moment in any sports platform, especially from a media product perspective. Don't think that's lost on anybody. Doesn't matter whether it's going to be 3.5 days or whether it's half an hour. The more data and the more information and metabolic data that you can like push out, that anybody can sort of grab, I think that just helps the general understanding of sport. As pointed out, like, people just don't understand how fit and amazing these athletes are, and in some ways you have to be able to narrate that story and to be able to show it, and of course data is a good way of doing that.
Yeah. And if you're going to, I mean, you're an elite athlete yourself. With
Well, I
a
was
long
in a former
distinguished
life,
career.
mate. In a former life.
But if you're going to try to put words on what the athletes here, the competitors, are doing, how demanding is this, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's crazy to start off.
You don't want to jump in and swim around? No?
Well, normally, like, I'm not a big boat person, so normally I'd be preferred to be in the water, to be perfectly honest. But not today. It's freezing. So, but you know, I think just in general, like it's easy to have this intimate knowledge about what they're going through at the moment in terms of like, you know, they're putting their body through things that most general people don't want to do. But yet they've trained for it, they're prepared for it, as already mentioned. And so like you see this in the data, you can see that like they just haven't walked off the street and they've just, you know, and just jumped in the water and running around on the islands here. I mean, it's a rustic environment. That means you have to prepare, and if you're prepared properly, mentally and physically, then of course you'll get the result. So I guess, like from my perspective, I just know that nobody here would have came to this race with the understanding that they were just going to do something with no preparation. So you can see that there's been a lot of process and a lot of thought going into that, and I feel like I'm just happy for them that they got to start, and of course I wish that all of them can finish, and I think that'll be the ultimate goal for all of them.
But if we go back to your golden days, how would you have performed in this kind of race?
I'd be on the boat already with you, offering expert comments.
That's good. One water race, it's not really under the World Triathlon umbrella, but you're still here. What are you curious at? What are you looking at?
Yeah, I think like obviously we have a multi-sport section, let's say, within our portfolio under the governance of the International Federation. That is a multifacet of different disciplines, and one in particular being aquathon, which is essentially swim run. There are, of course, a lot of events out and a lot of private organisers that are putting on swim run events. Okay, this is let's say a very, very high end level one, but of course there are entry opportunities all around the world, around the globe. So I think one part is like, okay, what are we governing? What are we regulating? How are we working as an international federation? The other is that the endurance market, the endurance community is such a innovative bunch of individuals, and as a community, like when things come on board and whether it's a fad or whether it's interesting, then they jump on board, and we can stay, let's say, I'll be a little bit more sterile and on our train tracks, or we can be a little bit more open-minded and consider the opportunities that we have working with different private organisers to develop different parts of the community and have an attachment across all.
Yeah. And Marcus, is that something that you notice also from a broadcaster point of view or organizer point of view, that they are more interested for every year in the work that you are doing, the research?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be so, and I think it's critical to know that, I mean, in basically all aspects, elite sports drives the development of much things, from scientific perspectives, shoes, for example.
You're laughing.
Yeah. No, I mean that's it. I mean, like the innovation it's often thought, I think, that like the rules are setting where the sport goes, but it doesn't work like that. The industry sets where the athletes take the sport, and the rules are somewhat always following. And somehow you have to have this ability to be able to work out where you need to go, but at the same time you're kind of getting governed by what everybody's doing, and that's because sports science and the coaching and the development side of the sport is just going so fast because the industry is dictating it, that you're having to go with it. And that's why I was saying, if you're not able to be nimble and adjust as an international federation, you can somewhat be the tail of the dog rather than at the other end, and that's where we need to be.
Yeah. And in terms, Chris, of research or technical improvements and so on, if you look at this competition, this race here, is there something you can bring for taking the next step in the triathlon world?
Yeah, look, and as I mentioned before, like, I mean, safety is the utmost importance for any event, and we don't deliver thousands of triathlon events around the world. Private organisers do that, and clubs, local clubs and national federations, and you have to have a set of requirements and sort of guidelines to be able to make sure that it ensures everyone's safety, but any additional information that we have that then can be fed back into what is the general purpose of educational material that you can provide is going to be of benefit to the sport, because like I said, it could be from one country, you're just working out where you put a cone in the road and what is the temperature of the water and can they swim in a wetsuit or can't they swim in a wetsuit, to be able to be here at an elite level, and you're like reading the obviously the data based upon that. So there's a correlation between the very development of the sport and what you learn at an elite level, and you have to be able to use that.
Yeah. Finally, will you stay awake and watch this race all the way to the end?
Yeah, I'll try. I might take a bit of a nap. If I'm on this boat, I don't like my chance. Although it's a beautiful boat.
It is. Thank you very much, Chris. And thank you, Marcus. Also, you come back later on.